Module 5, Promoting Diversity and Inclusion within Organizations. There are various ways that you can promote diversity and inclusion within an organization. This module is going to hone in on 5 practical steps that you can take to do exactly that. Diversify Talent. Diversity is a very important driver of inclusion. Talent should be diverse within all echelons of an organization, including executive management and board roles. It's often the responsibility of management and organizational leaders to ensure that hiring processes are constantly evaluated to assess if there are any blocks to diversity along the way. Manager training. Organizations should ensure that their core business leaders and managers are at the forefront of diversity and inclusion efforts. In addition to this, all leaders should be held accountable to progress diversity and inclusion efforts within an organization, as they are the ones who are instrumental to these efforts succeeding. A large part of this can be done through training. Managers should attend training sessions to learn how to best approach various situations with employees. Training can include a greater awareness of how to have a conversation with an employee or how to identify the unconscious bias they have, which can lead to automatic assumptions based on someone's race or gender, for example. Training opportunities can also be extended to the whole organization to actively reduce stigma and improve psychological safety at work. Culture of openness. Organizations should hold a zero-tolerance policy for any form of discriminatory behavior, such as harassment or bullying. It is important that all employees are adequately trained to be able to recognize and address instances of microaggressive behavior. A microaggression is any form of unintentional or subtle behavior that can be discriminatory towards a marginalized group, such as ethnic minorities. Organizations should also strive to establish ways to keep each other accountable in order to ensure that a culture of openness is maintained. Active listening. To better understand any diversity and inclusion issues, you can utilize anonymous surveys and run focus groups. This will allow you to assess and gauge what your employees might be feeling so that you can take the relevant actions needed. Surveys are a useful way to gather anonymous and honest feedback, which means that employees might feel more comfortable to express their true feelings. It's important to act on any information or feedback you receive. Employees can often become frustrated if you ask for their input around diversity and inclusion strategies and then proceed to ignore it. It's important to note that employees who feel as if their voices are heard are more likely to be engaged and productive. If you actively listen to your employees, you are more likely to build a culture where everyone feels that they can bring their authentic selves to work. Remove barriers. It is important to acknowledge that there can be barriers when you are trying to implement diversity and inclusion strategies which need to be removed. An example of a barrier might be language. Working in multicultural organizations can mean that language barriers are something that is often a challenge for many people. If there's a lack of proficiency in the primary language that organization uses, this can often lead to tasks taking more time. Additionally, if an employee does not understand procedures and the role requirements, this can potentially lead to a decrease in productivity and higher turnover rates. In order to prevent an employee feeling uncomfortable, language plays a large part in diversity and inclusion. It is therefore important to recognize language as a potential barrier which might need to be addressed. Organizational silos are another area that leaders need to be conscious of. This can sometimes create an us versus them culture. Within the workplace, differences in nationality or language can be a strong bonding factor between people, which can often be taken advantage of. This can lead to a segregated and divided workforce, where knowledge is not adequately shared or there's a lack of unity. It is important that you are aware of barriers such as language and organizational silos when promoting diversity and inclusion. This is so that you can be mindful of how these barriers might need to be addressed.